So these are some of my thoughts on the Canon C200 and particularly this test film that I shot here in Canon Cinema Raw Light. These first shots here were taken super early in the morning, so just before sunrise, probably about 5:45 in the morning in March. This is actually Old Harry Rocks that you can see here. So as the sun hadn't quite come up yet, it was obviously very dark. You can see the lights are still on in the ferry there in the background. And on that first shot, actually, if you look close enough, you can just about make out, you know, if I zoom in a little bit, it's a bit easier to see, but you can just about make out the twinkling lights of Poole and Bournemouth there in the distance, which is quite nice. So this was really, really dark. There wasn't a lot of light at all, but the sky was making this incredible colour just before sunrise. And it's one of those moments when you set a camera up and you're not really sure how it's going to respond to the given situation, but I actually turned on the camera and looked at the screen and just kind of said, wow, out loud actually. I'm glad there was no one there watching me talk to myself or talk to a camera. So this is all shot at 0 dB gain, which is the base ISO in C-Log 2 of ISO 400, I believe. As you can see, a really lovely clean image. With some of these images, particularly this third shot here with the ferry, I think I actually overexposed it ever so slightly. So I actually jumped into the Cinema Raw Light source settings in Premiere Pro and actually took down the exposure by 1 stop here. As you can also see, I did some tweaking to the color temperature and the tint slightly. So I shot these all at just daylight setting, so 5600 kelvins with 0 tint. Although it looked quite nice, I don't think it actually represented what it actually looked like on the day. So a couple of little tweaks to the white balance and the tint actually brought out the colours of which I think represented what it actually looked like on the day. So this first shot here with this rock and the waves really kind of shows off the ability of such a high data rate at 1 gigabit per second. Water is notoriously difficult for compressed codecs. It's quite often that you'll see artifacting and basically there's so much movement happening within the shot that quite often codecs with a fairly low bit rate can sometimes fall apart a little bit if there's quite a lot of movement. There's absolutely none of that going on here with the Canon Cinema Raw Light codec, even when you punch in, and there's a lot of movement going on in this shot. But if we look at just the small section, it's all the information is there, and there's just a level of clarity there which just is pretty awesome, to be honest. So in terms of issues that I've noticed with Cinema Raw Light and the C200, this particular shot shows a fair bit of banding in the sky, and I think if you zoom in a little bit here, you can see it pretty clearly. As you see the gradient and you follow it down, you can quite clearly see a bit of banding in the sky here. I say a bit, there's quite a lot. Now I don't know if this is a limitation of Cinema Raw Light. I don't know if this is a limitation of the C200. It might be a bit of user error. Perhaps I should have exposed more for the sky. This banding does bother me slightly, but also you have to remember that this was shot at 60 frames a second. So that means that the raw files are actually only 10-bit. I say only, that's pretty good, but 10-bit rather than 12-bit. So if I was recording at 24, 25 or 30p, then this would have been a 12-bit file, which would have given me a lot more color information. This is a really extreme test at the end of the day. I mean, gradients of any kind like this are gonna show some banding with most footage. I kind of didn't expect to see it with RAW, but that's part of why I do these tests, so I can really understand the camera's abilities, its strengths and weaknesses. So this shot here is about probably 10 minutes after that previous sunrise shot, so the sun is definitely up at this point. It's worth noticing the pebbles and the rocks on the little beach down there on the bottom left hand corner. Just taking a look at how much detail is in the file. Pretty awesome. So this shot here really kind of shows off why I really love this camera at the moment, and I love the footage out of it in cinema raw light. It just has what I feel a really cinematic look to it, and when you open up the files, the colours are quite natural. They're fairly vivid, but they leave you in a really good place to be able to push and pull and stylize the look in whatever way you want. So these shots here about half an hour to 40 minutes after sunrise, and you can see how bright the sun is on those white sections that are sort of facing the sun. Now what's really impressive about these files is if you absolutely needed to take the exposure down a bit more in order to recover some of those highlights there, that you really, you could. There's plenty of option to do that. I quite like the fact that they're sort of almost clipping, and gives it that feeling that it was a really bright day. You kind of get the impression that it's almost glaring, like if you looked at something really bright with the eyes, then it might have that kind of glare. Again, colour's not really done a lot with them here. It's just pretty much out of the camera with some tweaks to the blues and pushing the greens a little bit more towards the warmer tones, and just adding a very small amount of warmth to the whites as well. These shots are handheld. I kind of wanted to see what it would look like just to handhold a lot of these shots later on. And then we're getting on to about an hour and a half maybe after sunrise at this point, and the dynamic range again really kind of being shown off here quite nicely. I think what's quite nice about this shot of the cliff is just the amount of detail that is there, and nothing's lost. Nothing looks like it's missing due to compression or any other reason. It just kind of is all there, which is quite nice. And that's it really. That's my thoughts on this particular little test shoot with the Canon C200 shooting cinema raw light. I'm going to continue to do some testing. I think the next one perhaps will be with shooting maybe 24 frames a second and testing out the 12-bit codec. So if you are interested in checking out these in the future, then please do subscribe. You can hit the bell icon to stay up to date with any future videos that I put out. And if you really want to, you can let me know your thoughts on the camera. Have you used the C200? Do you own the C200? Are you an editor that has worked with the cinema raw light files? Let me know what you think. It'll be quite interesting to see what other people's thoughts and opinions are on this camera and the footage that it produces. Thanks.